Hello, welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today, we go to ancient Greek philosophy, specifically Stoicism. We're going to be talking about Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. This is a very interesting text because when this was originally put together for publication, the title was called To Himself. And that's because it's a collection of writings from this Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor during the 2nd century AD. And it's a collection of reflections to himself. He writes down observations or lessons he's learned about life for reflection, so he can ponder over them. And he even has dialogues with himself with these writings. It's kind of like a journal or diary, but not really, because unlike a journal or diary where you're more putting like daily logs about events that are happening to you on a regular basis, instead of that, Marcus Aurelius is more just writing concepts or profound observations that he's noticed, and he's having deep reflections about that for the purpose of spiritual development. So they're actually for meditative purposes rather than just for recording purposes. Now, it's also interesting because I remember I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine about spirituality. Now, I'm into spirituality. I believe that there is a spirit, a soul, and this buddy of mine, not so much. But we were talking, and eventually she mentioned or asked, well, how do you develop spiritually? How do you become more spiritually healthy if that's what you believe in? Like, if you want to become more physically healthy or develop physically, well, you go to the gym and you exercise, right? Or if you want to develop mentally, then you go to school or study or what have you. How do you develop spiritually? And I told her one way to do that is by meditating. Then she said, I'm not really into that. I'm going to be quite honest with you. This is what she said. I'm not really into going into a quiet room with complete silence and doing the yoga pose, Om, the really stereotypical version of meditation. And I told her, that's just one way of meditation. There's all types of ways you can meditate. There's group meditation. You can put on some headphones, listen to some relaxing music. Prayer is another form of meditation. And this is a form of meditation. Writing down deep and profound observations that you notice about life and reflecting on them for the purpose of self-development. That's a form of meditation. So it's a great title. So what is Marcus Aurelius reflecting on in this text? Well, why don't we bring this to a context of today? I often notice on social media, like Facebook and what have you, that you'll see posts, or at least I notice a lot of posts from people putting up comments about like hardships they have in life, whether it's big or small, legit or not legit, drama or not. People put on Facebook a lot of that kind of stuff, whether it's relationship problems or, financial situations, like, oh man, I just lost my job. I see people putting stuff about them being in debt, bad things that have happened to them. Maybe some person that they know very closely really hurt them emotionally, or maybe sometimes I see people put stuff about some random person that they just met, tell them something that really affected them emotionally, and now they're really hurt about it. Sometimes I see people posting stuff like deaths in the family, or like people going through serious illnesses, all types of valid problems, right? And you'll see all these comments of encouragement, or also all these comments of arguments, to be quite honest with you, agreements, disagreements. And sometimes it's sad, but other times it kind of gets really interesting because somebody will bring up something that's offensive and then they'll go off on this argument or this tangent. But oftentimes the person that's commenting, I oftentimes notice that they're asking why is this happening? I'm dealing with this problem and I need validation. I don't understand why this is happening to me. This sucks. Why do I have to deal with this issue, right? And what Marcus Aurelius says in this text is that bad experiences happen. There's a meaning behind bad experiences, and they're hurtful and they're harmful, and you go through a lot of pain and suffering and hardships, but there's a meaning behind it and there's purpose behind it. And in many ways, there are actually benefits to those hardships. And this is counter to a lot of today's culture, right? Specifically what I notice on social media. So let me share with you some of these reflections, and we can talk about what I mean. Listen to this quote. Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest. It is my bad luck that this has happened to me. No, you should rather say, it is my good luck that although this has happened to me, I can bear it without pain, neither crushed by the present nor fearful of the future. Because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So I see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it. Or in general, would you call anything a misfortune for a man which is not a deviation from man's nature? Or anything a deviation from man's nature which is not contrary to the purpose of his nature? So in all future events, which might induce sadness, remember to call on this principle. This is no misfortune, but to bear it true to yourself is good fortune. As a Roman emperor, right, Marcus Aurelius dealt with a lot of hardships himself. So he's trying to make sense out of it too. Remember, this is to himself. So he's not lecturing or telling somebody else. He's trying to make sense of it for himself. And what he's telling himself is, you got to see those hardships or those difficulties in life as opportunities to grow spiritually. That's really what they are. They're opportunities to rise to the occasion. But the occasion is spiritual development. And remember the metaphor that he uses. You know, the rock face and the waves are hitting the rock face and deflecting off of it, like when you're at a beach or on a shore, a seashore or something, and you see the water constantly bouncing off of the rock back into the sea. Remember that metaphor. I have reflected that the nature of the offender himself is akin to my own. Not a kinship of blood or seed, but a sharing in the same mind, the same fragment of divinity. Therefore, I cannot be harmed by any of them, as none will infect me with their wrong, nor can I be angry with my kinsman or hate him. We were born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. So to work in opposition to one another is against nature. And anger or rejection is opposition. So he's bringing up this idea that we're all part of nature, all of us. All of us are part of this whole that is nature. So when somebody does wrong to you, what that instance is an instance of nature. And when you're mad at that person for doing that, you're basically mad at nature. This is what Marcus Aurelius is saying. For example, when somebody calls you like a fatso, and then you get really upset about it, you being called a fatso is part of nature. And you getting mad or upset at that person for calling you that is like you getting upset at nature itself. Bear with me, right, as I stick to this metaphor. I might not have you at this moment, but I'm gonna stick with this metaphor, and maybe you'll kind of get at least the logic of what Marcus Aurelius is saying. Failure to read what is happening in another soul is not easily seen as a cause of unhappiness. But those who fail to attend to the motions of their own soul are necessarily unhappy. Let's go back to that example of when somebody calls you a fatso. What you need to do, or what Marcus Aurelius is saying what he needs to do, is focus on the spiritual health of that offender. Why is that person calling me a fatso? What is he trying to achieve by calling me that? What is he lacking to that which compels him to do that? When you start to do that, not only do you get to the core issue, you also begin to understand how that instance relates to nature as a whole. You can begin to understand the true relationship between that offense, the offender, and yourself. To resent anything that happens is to separate oneself in revolt from nature, which holds in collective embrace the particular nature of all other things. The end for rational creatures is to follow the reason and the rule of that most venerable archetype of a governing state, the universe. We're all connected with each other because we're all part of this one thing known as the universe. Every instance that happens Every experience that we have with each other is part of this whole universe. And the universe does have a certain order or a way of being. So every experience follows within that certain order or way of being. So when we look at an offense, like somebody called you a fatso, you have to look at it as, what purpose does this experience have in relation to the grand nature of being? There's some purpose here. This is part of nature. Nothing is so conducive to greatness of mind as the ability to subject each element of our experience in life to methodical and truthful examination, always at the same time using this scrutiny as a means to reflect on the nature of the universe, the contribution any given action or event makes to that nature, the value this has for the whole, and the value it has for man, and man is an inhabitant of the highest city, of which all other cities are mere households. So if you try your very best to keep emotion in check and think about actually the meaning of why this is happening, this offense, you can begin to understand the reality of how nature actually works. Returning to that fatso example, this person called me a fatso. This person called me a fatso because, let's say, they're insecure about their own look, or they're jealous of you, or they're attacking you to make themselves feel better about who they are because they're lacking something. And that way we get a better understanding, a better hold of what's actually happening. So we get to the core issue instead of having this more dismissive emotional response of, well, F you, right? The hell with you. I hate you. You're an asshole. I hate people like this. Why is this happening to me? I wish this wouldn't happen to me. When you do that, you're not really making any progress. You're not really getting better. You're losing the reality of the situation. You're lost in this false sense of reality. So you can't advance. You're caught up in this false reality that's not going to get you anywhere because you don't really have an understanding of what actually is happening. Again, each creature is made in the interest of another. Its course is directed to that for which it was made. Its end lies in that to which its course is directed. And where its end is, there also for each is its benefit, and for its good. It follows that the good of a rational creature is community. It has long been shown that we are born for community. Let's go back to that metaphor with the rock face and the water hitting the rock face like when you're on the shore. Difficult experiences you got to see as opportunities for spiritual growth. And you have to understand that we are all part of nature. So all experiences that happen have some purpose and meaning, and you can use them as opportunities for spiritual growth. That person is called you a fatso. It's like the water hitting you and you're the rock face, right? You should be like the rock face, and you should be, instead of letting the water just completely go over the rock face, you should use this as an opportunity to redirect the water or redirect this person to where they really should supposed to go. Because in nature, the water is trying to go one way, but the rock face is forcing the water to go another way. It's forcing the water to go along with what nature intended. In this way, you are the rock face, and the offender is trying to get you to go one way, but you're like, no, my nature is a rock face. And once you become spiritually aware of what's actually happening, you can redirect the offender toward a more beneficial way of being, a being that aligns with nature. In one respect, man is something with the closest affinity to us, in that it is our duty to do good to men and tolerate them. But insofar as some are obstacles to my proper work, man joins the category of things indifferent to me. No less than the sun, the wind, a wild animal, these can impede some activity, yes, but they form no impediments to my impulse or my disposition, because here there is conditional commitment and the power of adaptation. The mind adapts and turns round any obstacle to action to serve its objective. A hindrance to a given work is turned to its furtherance. An obstacle in a given path becomes an advance. So Marcus Aurelius is telling himself that he needs to see offenders just like any other part of nature. Like the sun, how sometimes you go out and it's just too hot out here. Or the rain, like, oh, well, it's going to be wet. And you just redirect. You say, okay, it's really hot. Let me take out my sun hat. Let me put on my glasses. Or you see the rain and you're like, all right, let me put on my overcoat or take out my umbrella. You redirect yourself. And you do that through a state of mind. What he's saying is that ultimately when it comes down to it, the reality of it is people who offend you or bad experiences that happen to you are just like these natural occurrences that happen. It's the same thing. You just have to be aware of how reality actually works. Be aware that we're all connected. When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls. Penetrate inside and see what sort of people they are. You will realize that there is no need to be racked with anxiety, that they should hold any particular opinion about you. But you should still be kind to them. They are by nature your friends. And the gods too help them in various ways, dreams and divinations, at least to the objects of their concern. What Marcus Aurelius is saying here is that these offenders are your friends in the sense that they are part of nature as much as you are part of nature. They are a part of this universe just as much as you are part of this universe. And we're all connected by being part of this existence. And the way we can deal particularly with offenders is that we can look at their spiritual health. We can look at how they are spiritually. And in that way, we're able to understand how they relate to us in the context of the overall universe or nature, which we're all a part of. Basically, once you begin to understand the actual reality of the situation, that knowledge can help you not only overcome bad experiences, but grow spiritually by being aware that this is all part of nature. Kindness is invincible. If it is sincere, not fawning or pretense. What can the most aggressive man do to you if you continue to be kind to him? If, as an opportunity arises, you gently admonish him and take your time to re-educate him at the very moment when he is trying to do you harm? No, son, we were born for other purposes than this. There is no way that I can be harmed, but you are harming yourself, son. And show him delicately how things are, making the general point that bees do not act like this or any other creature of gregarious nature. But your advice must not be ironic or critical. It should be affectionate with no hurt feelings, not a lecture or demonstration to impress others, but the way you would talk to someone by himself, irrespective of company. So be like that rock face. And as the rock face redirects the water back into the sea, as do you redirect the offender back to where he's supposed to be or she's supposed to be, and help him out or her out through kindness. There is nothing manly in being angry, but a gentle calm is both more human and therefore more virile. It is the gentle who have strength, sinew, and courage, not the indignant and complaining. The closer to control of emotion, the closer to power. Anger is as much a sign of weakness as is pain. Both have been wounded and have surrendered. Society tends to perpetuate modes of anger as something that you're supposed to be, and social media sometimes doesn't help. Nothing gets solved by having angry arguments with each other. Ultimately, when you're angry, really you're just afraid. It's simply showing a lack of control of the situation, quite frankly. It is also demonstrating that you're unaware of what's actually happening. You're lacking knowledge, right? And you're afraid to admit it, pretty much. Kindness is invincible because it represents a state of knowledge, a state of being aware of the actual situation that you're in. And when you're kind, you're not afraid. When you're kind, you actually have a purpose, a meaningful purpose. So be like that rock face and redirect your offender to its natural course of being, just like the rock face redirects that water to its natural course of being. Remember, all of us are part of nature. In that way, we all serve a purpose to benefit each other because we're all part of the flow of the universe, the flow of nature. Remember that. Bad experiences are opportunities for spiritual growth. Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Check it out. Well, you've been watching The Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Thanks for watching. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.